Hello, Pete. Pete Stone, Pedro Piedra. How are you, mate?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Good. In this podcast, we always ask our guests to introduce themselves, so let's do it. Who are you, mate?
So, my name is Pete Stone. Pretty much grew up in Luton. Now live in sunny Swindon,
Yeah.
in the southwest of the UK. I work in compliance and privacy, and have been doing that for several years now, quite a few years. Started off in investigations, in particular in law enforcement and in the police, and then moved into some various different roles outside of the police before moving into the more corporate sector. Got two daughters, Hannah and Lauren, 19 and 20, both studying at university, which I'm very, very proud of. One studying chiropractic and the other studying physiotherapy. And so, yeah.
Great.
That's me.
That's you. Well, let's go back to your roots, mate, right?
Go for it.
Tell me a little bit about that background of being a copper. What moved you to go into that direction?
I don't know. I think it's
Come on.
No, I think it was one of those situations. So, obviously went to school, did my GCSEs, passed my GCSEs, did pretty well, I think, but didn't really know what I wanted to do. Didn't know where I wanted to go. Didn't really know. There was a part of me that wanted to go into physiotherapy, which is quite unusual, seeing as that's what Hannah does now, or is going into. There was a part of me that wanted to be a chef. At one point, I wanted to work in the fire service. Then realised I don't like heights. Put me off that. Then thought I could be a paramedic.
Yeah.
But I don't like blood, so that put me off that. So left school and went and did a course in travel and tourism briefly, because I kind of wanted to just travel a little bit. Didn't really want to nail down to anything in particular. Short while into my travel and tourism course, I got offered a job with a holiday company, UK holiday company, working at their headquarters and working in sort of agency sales, so liaising with travel agents regarding bookings for the brand, and fixing things like that. Did that for a little while, and then moved into a different department and did sort of group sales and kind of worked around that. Left, went for another opportunity that was closer to home. Didn't work out. It wasn't my cup of tea, and I was starting to get to that point where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. There was a part of me that was thinking about marketing, and was still living at home with my parents at the time.
You were young, right?
Yeah, 18. I think I would have been about 18 at the time.
Wow, yeah.
So yeah, 18, and so started working in a pub. Just literally walking distance. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Very social.
Why?
It was social. It was social. It was a really good bunch, and I was, made some really good friends, and we all kind of worked and we socialised, and I suppose in some ways for me it was kind of my university sort of style of, learning, but also enjoying, making friends and going out, but having a bit of money to be able to go out. I think my parents had other ideas, and I don't think they were particularly keen on me just
Working at the pub.
Not so much working at the pub, probably more the after hours entertainment of going out and getting drunk and not really considering a career choice at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I was kind of given an ultimatum to some extent. Yeah, my parents, my mum and dad were very keen for me to, not use the house as a hotel, which as a parent now I fully respect and fully understand. At the time I didn't.
Yeah, me too.
And so I was 18, and my parents were basically, right, that's it. You're going to apply for jobs. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So basically it was an opportunity of, right, well, you can join the Marines, the Army, the Navy, the police. Here's some applications, get them filled out.
Yeah.
Obviously it was still early days in terms of internet, so it's all handwritten application forms, and I was sat at the dining room table under the watchful eye of my father, literally writing out these application forms. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm 18, not going to get through any of these applications. You know, they're going to want people with life experience and things like that. And they started to progress. You know, each one of the applications started to progress. And as they did, I started to become more and more interested in it. It started to become a bit more of an opportunity and more of a challenge. I knew I was young. I knew I was very young to be going into it. And so happened that one of the police forces, I think there were two police forces that were kind of the recruitment positions were going at roughly the same time. I was going through the recruitment stage when you still had to do tests and various different tests and fitness tests and things like that. So each step, you know, it was a hoop to jump through. But it was kind of creating that curiosity for me. And it was kind of creating that desire to pass. You know, I'm enjoying this. Oh, let's get on to the next stage, see what that's like. And I remember very clearly getting to the interview stage. And I remember one of the interviewers very well. And even to this day, you know, he turned around and he said, "You're quite young. You know, you might not have the life experience needed for this. And you need to bear that in mind." And so I was like, "Yeah, I get it." But it was, you know, but he was very much, you know, this is a good learning process. This will, you know, put you in good stead for going forwards with whatever decisions you make in life. You know, you're turning up, you know, suited and booted to interviews. So it was a really good grounding.
Yeah.
And then I remember on 2001, a very unfortunate day, September the 11th, 2001. I remember getting my acceptance letter through, just as everything changed in the world, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so it was a mixed emotion day. And then, yeah, started in the January 2002. And pretty much, yeah, it was 10 years of learning, 10 years of developing, 10 years of growing up, 10 years of changing. And so, yeah, that's where I kind of went and, you know, went through all of the training, which is very different today to what it was then. Transferred forces. So I went from one police force to another, very different. So, yeah.
And what were you doing in the police? What was your assignment?
So started very much as as the process is or as it was very much you do 2 years probation, and during that 2 years you get a bit of a flavour for other elements and lots of training, lots of understanding the law and the requirements and you know various different elements of policing. I identified quite quickly that I enjoyed the investigation side of it. I quite enjoyed the interview side of it. And so for me, I as quickly as possible managed to get a secondment into an investigation team with who was my boss at the time, a very awesome detective who had a wealth of knowledge, very well established. I believe he's still in the police now, but in a different area. You know, really taught me to be inquisitive, to ask questions, to really dig deep, and was somebody I had a huge amount of respect for. Was also very fortunate in the fact that I had a lot of colleagues around me that had a wealth of experience. So whilst I was relatively new, and it was almost unheard of with somebody with as limited kind of time in the police to be making their way into detective, I was very much supported throughout and was learning all the time. So my focus was very much on investigations, CID, and that's where I think my passion for it grew.
CID?
CID, so Criminal Investigation Department. So very much dealing with, you know, taking statements, understanding the facts, presenting cases to court, gathering evidence, liaising with, you know, external agencies, internal teams and functions, and building cases for more serious crimes. So I think it was a real opportunity, and it was something that, you know, what I liked about it was that it changed daily. You know, you'd walk in on the day, you didn't know what you were walking into, you didn't know whether you were going to be finishing on time. You didn't, it was very reactive. But there was certainly at the time a real camaraderie about the teams. People would jump in and help. You could always ask for help, and people would be there to help. And I think that was always, very positive.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of negativity around the police and things like that, and a lot of bad publicity. But I also think there's a lot of good that went and has still probably goes unseen, because I felt it was an amazing time, and just to see a lot of what I saw, some really horrific things, but also to have that team support when you're going through it, and to know that the person next to you is going through it at the same time was always quite a comfort.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice. So it sounds that it was a interesting job, right? Why leaving the police to go into the corporate world?
I think times have changed. The corporate world is a very different animal, I suppose, in some respects. But at the same time, I think there's a lot that was, for me, easily transferable into the corporate world. And I think the difficulty, but also equally the most exciting challenge of the corporate world, is that there's a lot more grey areas, in my opinion. There's a lot more riding on the outcomes of certain situations, because be it an internal investigation, or be it a compliance issue, or whatever it is you could face in the corporate world, at some point somebody could lose their job over that. That's first and foremost, and secondly, there's also the brand reputation of what's going on, and how that can create a huge ripple effect through business. And so for me, it's probably the fact that it's different every day. There isn't the same situations, so to speak, but I think what is continual is that the change, and I think in the corporate environment you have to be a lot more agile in changing than you do in law enforcement. Law enforcement, you have your laws. Those laws have been around for many, many years, and they are, I'm not going to say they are, black and white, because I think there is an element of grey within those as well. But even the elements of grey within law enforcement are often backed up by case law and other, precedents and things like that. Whereas in the corporate environment, you do have the laws and regulations that govern you. Sometimes it's very much principle based, and it's the grey areas are a lot wider. But changing.
And you also have the internal framework, right?
Yeah,
the policies.
And that's exactly it. Those internal policies and those internal frameworks that you're creating, they can't be, blow the dust off of last year's version, or 2 years ago's version, or 3 years ago version, because everything's changed. And my experience in compliance is probably relatively immature in some respects compared to some others in similar positions out there. But I think for me, certainly the changes that I've seen in the last, when did we meet? When did we first meet?
2018.
2018. So yeah, in the last 5 years, just that, with everything that's gone on in the last 5 years, both socially, environmentally,
privacy, data.
Not even just privacy and data. You've got privacy, GDPR back in 2018. You've got COVID that took place. You've got so many social movements that have...
Sustainability has become like something on top. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, in the police, as a police officer, you don't have to worry about... I'd say you don't have to worry. Sustainability isn't at the forefront of your mind. There are obviously, I'm sure, people in police forces and police services that will consider that and think about that. But as a police officer, it's not there. Certainly when you're doing investigations. Whereas in the corporate world with compliance and the interaction between functions and the ever-changing climate of compliance, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just exploded, and I think we have to be so aware of everything now. I think for me, and this is purely my thought, it's kind of, compliance has evolved from like a legal compliance element where it is very much about fitting in with the laws and the regulations and the governance, and it's moved to a more organic, free-flowing compliance where we still have to consider the laws, obviously, but people and perception can have significantly more damage to the business than breaching the laws. I think perception is what concerns me more than people actually breaking
the law.
I think so, and I think because the environment's changed,
you can have your reputation being very, very damaged with the news that is completely out of control, right? It might not be even an issue. It's just perception that says, okay, these guys are doing wrong. It's like, wow, actually it was fake news, or it was something wrong. That was a mistake, but it doesn't represent a whole company. However, those kind of issues have a massive impact in the reputation of an organization that could have a massive impact in a lot of families that depend on that specific corporation, right?
Very much so. And I think one of the areas that I'm really keen to kind of keep together, I suppose, is making sure that we don't forget, the corporate knowledge, I think, changes massively. Corporate knowledge over the last 5 years, I think, has changed. Companies have changed. Companies' priorities have changed to some extent. And I think, for me, it's about remembering some of that originality of, what made that company unique in the first place, and what drew people to the company, what was the company built on, where is it now, and how do we kind of keep that
balance?
Yeah, the balance between old and new in terms of, keeping that identity of the company while still trying to reach to, new heights and make sure that we're able to adopt, sustainability goals, compliance goals, without policing it. And I think that's, for me, I don't think compliance can often be, the blockers, or seen as the blockers, as the police. And I think it's so important that we act more as facilitators. Bridge the gap, provide the subject matter expertise, but don't stifle the innovation, because far too long, you could sit on a question, you could sit on an approval and wait, whereas now we need to be far more reactive, and we've kind of got to balance the risks as well of certain decisions that are made, and understand the knock-on effect, but we've got to be doing it quicker and faster. I don't think we necessarily have the time that maybe people have in the past to kind of pose those questions and kind of mull over them and really consider them, because everything's a lot quicker now. Everything, the goals are quicker, the turnover, the expectations, everything is faster. And I think we need to make sure that you've got a strong foundation built before you can, really capitalize on what you want to achieve.
But that is a big challenge, because companies should be investing more in the education of their people. If you want to prevent, if you want to avoid having a compliance function blocking the ways of business, because sometimes the business, they go in such fast pace that they don't want to stop, they don't want to hold, right? And it has a sense, because they want to achieve the goal of arriving to the market faster. But organizations, sometimes they are not so keen on that kind of investment, right? Because they don't see they don't realize that there's a value behind that. You're preventing stuff. You are mitigating risks. How can a compliance officer, how can a sustainability officer achieve that successful preventive measures that could make them be that enabler to the business?
I think for me, it's I want to say it's really simple, but I don't think it is simple in terms of execution. But I think for me, it's very much about understanding where you are at this moment in time. Where are you and where is your organization? You know, what is their level of maturity when it comes to these topics? I think we've all experienced in the past having to complete trainings where you sit there and you are looking at a screen for 35 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour.
So painful, man.
And it's painful, and you're answering the questions, and then it freezes, and then
you ask someone, hey, what did you answer here?
And it does, you know, and I think we've all had experience. I think everyone's had experience of that. I think where, for me, it's important is that we look at that and we go, no, that's not what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And for me, it's about going, right, I want to get to this point. You know, I want my training to be a risk-based training that is appropriate for the function that it relates to, and it is appropriate for the level of seniority within the business.
Yeah.
Because there may be people that do not need to know the ins and outs about bribery and corruption and the risks of that. There are going to be individuals that don't necessarily need to be inundated with a 45-minute training on money laundering or you know, or competition law. However, there are going to be individuals that do need that input, and there's going to be, as you go through the organization, there's going to be different functions requiring different elements of training. Yeah. So I think for me, it's kind of identifying that, you know, this function could come into contact with these types of risks. This function could come into contact with these types of risks. And then it's about kind of almost highlighting that gold standard of what you want to get to.
Yeah.
And then going backwards and take it back to where are we now? Right. We need to develop a basic level of understanding across the board. Let's make it bite-sized. Let's break it out over a year. You know, how many times have we done in the past trainings, 3 or 4 hours worth of trainings that have got to be done within a month?
Yeah.
You know, and then that's it. Forget about it for a year. Forget about it for 2 years, depending on the company that you're in. You know, you don't need to worry. Whereas when we're trying to improve the culture of a company and try to improve the ethics and the ethical efficacy of a company, why just have compliance training once a year? And just to be clear, when I say compliance training, I do not just mean compliance
as a
training.
function, right? Yeah.
No, not just as a function. I'm talking about what mandatory trainings can improve the culture of a company. You know, and so, you know, diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion. You know, that hugely important.
Yeah.
Speak up. You know, the benefits of speak up. We see the reports. We see the findings. It's huge. Anti-bribery. You know, these are subject matters that we want people to be able to sit down, digest, and understand. It's going to take time. You know, you can't expect people to become experts overnight on the material that we're able to give them. It's got to be a plan, and it's got to be shown, and it's got to be shown to be improving, increasing, you know, the awareness, but also the participation.
Yeah.
You know, you can make a training mandatory.
And engaging, right? Yeah. Something engaging.
But mandatory shouldn't be the reason that people need to complete it. That should be there for the monitoring side of it. Don't get me wrong. You know, it's makes it easier to monitor to some extent. But people have got to understand that the training is of value. The training has a benefit.
Yeah.
You know, and if you've trained 100 people, you know, and one person raises a speak up that they would never have raised, for me, that's the start of the success, because if that 100 then turns into 1,000 people and we get the increase in speak ups or the increase in conflicts of interest being raised or gifts and hospitality being recorded, then that's a benefit, because people are understanding, people are feeling trusted. You know, I can make this disclosure because I feel that I'm trusted to make this disclosure, and I trust not only that they will listen, but that I can do this without, with the support, should I say, of my business or with my line manager, etc. So for me, it's about really breaking down the training into what do we really need people to know. Yeah. Let's build that base layer. Let's get some feedback and listen. Feedback. Yeah, this training was great. Cool. What was great about it? Well, I really liked that it was short, it was sweet, it was to the point, it gathered this, it did this. Brilliant. Okay, great. So they engaged with the short, bite-size, trainings. What wasn't good about it? Well, I didn't understand this, so I didn't. Okay, fine. So we know, I think far too long, sometimes we don't listen to the feedback as much as we should. And I think, the feedback's important.
Yeah.
Because if sometimes we're not going to be able to react to it, sometimes we're going to have to be, can't make this any different. It very much a structured program. But other times we do have that opportunity. And if through the evidence, through the feedback, through the engagement, through the participation rates, through potentially, staff surveys and just general improvements within culture, if the training can go some way to help him with that, then it's always going to be worth the investment. So you will get to that gold standard when you need to.
Yeah, I get it. I completely agree with you. But I would like to ask you, what is that motivates you every day to wake up, get your compliance hat, your privacy hat, and work, right? Go to work, try to help people, try to change the culture of an organization. What is behind yourself?
I think it's about giving people that opportunity, giving people, listening to that one person who's got an issue, who may have been sat with that issue for a long time. It's about making that one person difference. But also I think of it as, I almost want to say like a computer game. Compliance isn't a game, obviously, but it is kind of one of those situations where no day is the same. You keep going through the levels of the game, and you keep developing, you keep learning new things to complete that particular level. But you are never, in my opinion, ever going to let's almost say never going to achieve that proper gold standard, because everything changes, everything develops. So it could be the legislation and the regulation.
The AI.
Yeah. It could be innovative technology coming through, AI. It could be changes in products. It could be changes in markets. It could be changes in sustainability issues and goals. Every single day there is a new challenge. And so for me, what motivates me is that the job is never done. You don't sit there and go, I've got nothing to do today. I'm just gonna
have a podcast session today.
I'm just gonna sit back and relax, because there is nothing to do, because there is always something to do, because everything is changing. And I think, I'm fortunate enough to have a global role, which means that the world is my oyster. Yeah. But even with, regional specific roles or localized roles, everything is always changing. It could be the management structure. It could be the direction of the company. It could be a new innovative product, or it could be a new campaign, or
it could be a new risk, a local risk, so many challenges that happen in a local level that makes it really interesting, that kind of role, right?
And so you wake up in the morning, if you turn the telly on in the morning or turn the radio in the morning, it's almost like you switch on the news sometimes, and I think sometimes switching on the computer for a new day of work is very similar to that, because you don't know what you're going to be necessarily.
All the emails, right?
You don't know what's going to come into the inbox. You don't know what somebody's going to phone you about. You don't know and for me, I get very passionate about it, and I get very, very drawn into, what's happening? What can we do better? Let's try this and let's do this. But also have to step back every now and then and kind of let the business just take its steps forward, because I think it's fair to say that nobody does things necessarily to do the wrong thing. Everybody that you work with is really kind of focused on achieving their goals, doing the best thing that they can do. And I think it's really important, that we support them in that. I think compliance can be such a key ally in business because we see so much of what is going on. There are not many functions that have sort of a link into every other function because of the various things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I think it can be extremely, helpful to the business, especially with situations that we may have dealt with in the past as well, because, problems and learnings that you read about and that you've investigated and ways of improving, the culture, the practices, the processes. It's not ever about let's delay everything and it's always about how can we stop you having to do the unnecessary stuff so that you can focus on that. And that's a big thing for me. What I don't want is I don't want functions unnecessarily having to complete compliance related documentation or do work that actually can be automated or actually can be streamlined and more efficient, because that's not what they're there for. It's a byproduct of what we need, but it's about them being innovative in their own roles. It's about them doing what they can do with the confidence that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is that's a mountain to climb in any business, regardless of the maturity of it, because tomorrow there could be a change in X and you might have to start from scratch again.
Yeah. So what would you say are the biggest challenges that you're facing in your daily activities?
I don't think it's even just, I would go as far to say that it's probably not just daily activities. I think generally, more generally than that, I think the ever-changing landscape, it's about keeping up with the changes in regulation, the changes in expectations of what a brand can do, and really trying to find efficient ways to be able to continue as a business.
Yeah.
We've seen with Speak Up, the EU regulations around Speak Up and some of the individuality that you have in different regions regarding Speak Up. EU, you could break that down into certain EU countries, may have a slightly alternative way that it needs to be addressed. And then you've got the US, you've got China. So there's lots of, anomalies in the way that certain things are being done. So you have to be able to adapt for that. And that takes time.
Yeah.
And then you talk about privacy and you see that, you've got the EU, you've got the UK, you've now got the US that's doing a lot with its various states. Again, it takes time to be able to be aware of that, understand it and adapt to it, and then educate the business accordingly for those pockets of changes. And I think for me, that is where the challenge lies, is because there isn't and I'm not saying for 1 second there should or shouldn't be, but there is no universal, there is no universal regulation on this particular point or this particular point. There's overarching and there's a lot of crossover and there's a lot of similarity, but also there's risk because there's little things that can fall through the gap. There's little things that we need to educate and support our teams on that are nuances. And I think for me, that's what keeps me up at night is, it's ever changing. It is becoming more and more challenging. We're ultimately in a cost of living crisis at the moment. Costs have gone up across the board. We see the impacts of that both in business and in society. And compliance and things like that need to still be very much well maintained throughout, but also may not be as much of a priority as other elements of the business.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very much about working closely with your senior leaders, working closely with your CEOs and CFOs and various different stakeholders to really help them understand of how you can support the business while still maintaining that compliance level, and assuring them that you are aware and ahead of the game on everything without unnecessarily spending, because I think there is an opportunity to go, right, we're going to get some consultants over here, we're going to get this firm to do this and this, and it can kind of go out of control, you know, and what is it you actually want to achieve? Well, we need to achieve this. Oh, well, we don't need all of that. So for me, it's about really just staying alive to what is changing, adapting, and making sure that the business is kept up to date on the potential risks and the fallout from it. You know, not saying this is going to happen, this could happen because of X, Y, and Z. We need to be prepared for this in such a way. And I think that can be accepted. You know, I think the businesses do. I think they come forward and say, yeah, okay. But it is about having that understanding and that respect and that being able to step up and say, this is a really bad idea because of X, Y, and Z. And kind of taking the emotion and the personality out of it and just being very fact-based. You know, this could be a risk to us because of 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Or I agree this is a great course of action. What about considering this because it might mitigate some of that risk? And I think it takes time. You know, it takes time to build that trust up. It takes time to... I think it takes a lot of time for a compliance person to kind of see, or not just a compliance person, sorry, but anyone in the business to see the benefits that the compliance function can bring to a business. Because I think it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very subtle.
Yeah.
You know, it's very subtle. If you integrate well into the business and you know, you very much want to work with the business, not kind of clashing, it's very subtle changes that you will see. You know, you'll see hopefully the increase in disclosures. And I'm being very generic on disclosures. You'll see the increase. You know, you might start to see the escalation in employee surveys, you know, the improvements being made and things like that.
Because it's very difficult to materialize some of the benefits of a strong compliance function, right? Because you're trying to avoid risks, to mitigate, to make them come real, right? So what would you say to someone that is thinking, okay, yeah, I want to become a compliance officer. I want to become a privacy officer. I want to do something in that area, because it's going to be challenge, right? They're going to be facing challenges all the time. But what would you say to encourage them? Okay, mate, go and do it. Yeah.
I think for me, I think it is a fantastic role in any business. I think it's, you know, it's got the real potential to really, you can come away at the end of the day feeling like you have made a difference.
Yeah.
What I would be mindful of is you won't always get thanks for what you have to do. You know, it's you know, it won't be recognized by everyone, the value you may have added on a particular situation or something like that. And that's not a discredit to any of the, you know, functions or the stakeholders. It's just, that's your role. You know, your role is to deal with the risk. It's not a role that particularly gets
fans.
I don't want to say fans. No, I'm thinking like it's kind of a compliance or privacy role. It's kind of like a seatbelt, I suppose. This may be the worst analogy ever. It's kind of like a seatbelt. You know, you need to wear your seatbelt. Doesn't matter how uncomfortable it is or what. You know, you kind of have to wear that seatbelt every day. It's not until you have to slam those brakes on, or you hit the back of another car, or another car plows into you, that you kind of go, quite pleased I was wearing that seatbelt.
Yeah.
You know, it's there. Compliance is there. It's there, but it doesn't. When things are going well, you don't realize compliance is there. You know, when everything is when company is moving in the right direction and everybody's happy and everybody's content and money's being made, or whatever, you know, goals are being achieved or whatever it may be, compliance doesn't really come up because everything's smooth, everything's great. When something changes in that oasis, then compliance
Where's that guy? Where's that guy? What's his name? Come. Yeah, the tall guy. Yeah, Pete, come. Tell us what's wrong here.
When when suddenly you can't do this anymore because regulators have said no. When you know, when suddenly we want to go into a different market or a different region, that's when, we're now on unsteady ground. That's when compliance come in, and you know, maybe often that they come in and it feels that, hang on a minute, we just want to penetrate this market. We want to get in. Hang on, wait, you know, and we work very closely with legal, you know, in a lot of compliance, legal backgrounds, or work very closely with legal. But I think that's when a compliance officer really adds the value to the business, because when it's good, it's great. Everything's brilliant. You know, you just trainings are going nicely. People are making the right disclosures at the right time. Annual awareness is up, you know, participations, feedback is lovely. You know, you could still keep improving, but it's, you know, you're kind of at that point where it's like, this is nice. This is good. We've got a great culture. Everyone's moving forward. Then something happens and there's a blip in the road, and you know, we've got to do this, and that is when the compliance officer for me can really benefit the business, because there's so much there that they can be impacting on, that it just whether or not they will be seen as positive at the time, I think in the long run, if you can do that properly, that's where you will get the most pride in your work, when you walk away after that challenge, and you've dealt with that challenge, and the business has come away from it and has been able to achieve its objective, you know, and you had a little part in that, but you protected the business at the same time, protected the people. I think that's where you kind of walk away afterwards and you go, that was good. Now, there may not be any huge round of applause or trumpets playing that compliance, because compliance would have only been a small part of it.
Yeah.
But that, how you deal with those challenges is where you will get the rewards personally.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the end of this really nice session. Tell me a little bit of what are your plans in the future, mate? Where do you see yourself in, let's say, 7 years, 2030?
Running a bar on a beach in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Mikael, you also want to come, right? Awesome. Perfect.
7 years, 2030. I think for me, I don't know. I as bizarre as it sounds, I don't want to make that commitment. You know, I'm very, very happy with where I am and how I'm on a learning curve at the moment. I'm in a really good position with my learning, my own development. I think for me, having that desire still to do my job, not do my job because that sounds very weird, but the desire to still achieve and still build better on what I'm doing and how I'm coming across, working on myself.
Yeah.
You know, how can I be a better leader? How can I be a better line manager? How can I be a better professional? Yeah. How can I be a better father as well at times? You know, for me, it's, I think, that awareness of self-development and that desire to continually self-develop means that where I am in 7 years, to some extent, isn't necessarily important. It's how I get to that 7 years, I think, for me, which is the important thing. Have I done what I wanted to achieve? Have I done it the way I wanted? Not I wanted to do it selfishly or arrogantly, but did I compromise my values? Did I compromise my beliefs? Did I compromise my level at any point? Or did I do what I think was right? Yeah. And I think for me, it's very much the next 7 years could, I mean, we're flying by. Yeah. It's going quick. Who knows? But it'll be exciting.
But to achieve that goal of being a successful person in 7 years, I think that we all need to work on ourselves, right? So the next question is connected to what we do in our company, right? In Brain Tonic, we try to help organizations invest in their people, in their talent, to deal better with issues, with problems, with stress, with their emotional wellness, right? So what are your do's every day or during the week to keep yourself healthy, to deal with your issues?
That's a good question. It changes regularly depending on, you know, I wish I could say that I meditated daily or I did yoga daily.
You wish to say that?
I wish I could.
Yeah?
I wish I could. Even when I say I do try to do a little bit of yoga every now and then, I think if anyone was familiar with yoga, what I do probably looks completely different. Yeah. But no, what I must admit, over the last 7-8 months, one thing I have found exceptionally important is speaking to someone. You know, speaking to a therapist, speaking to somebody to support, speaking to a coach, be it a professional coach or, you know, not mental health professional as such, but, you know, a therapist. And I have found in the last 7 months through speaking to a therapist, just not so much work related, just me related, you know, both in work, in family life, in home life, in all of those different elements, talking to someone and kind of having that opportunity. Pretty much doing it every 2 weeks, I would say, at the moment. And I was skeptical. You know, I was really skeptical about doing it because I wasn't sure if it would work. You know, I dealt with a lot of trauma and situations in the past, very difficult situations. Never really given it a great deal of thought, but some events happened and I felt that it was the right time. And it's one of the, I think it's one of the things that I would recommend to anyone is find someone to speak to. Find someone where you can get it off your chest, where you can speak freely without judgment and really kind of learn about yourself, because I would say I've changed over the last 7 months in many good ways, I'd hope. There's still some changes to make. I do try and keep fit because I find that a real help. You know, going to the gym or I've started up running again because I'm a fair weather runner, and in the UK that's sporadic at best. But I do try and run a little bit at the moment. I think for me, one of the things that I found impacted me the most was eating. You know, eating healthily, and that's something I'm probably more focusing on more recently. Is really trying to improve what I'm putting into my body and trying to eat healthily and eat properly, you know, not skip meals as such, making sure I'm consuming enough calories and eating healthily on it, because I was noticing at times when I was under stress, under pressure, meals would be skipped, you know, and then that had a knock-on effect with my whole well-being. And I'd go a couple of days where I hadn't eaten enough and I'd be thinking, well, actually, may not be feeling great because of that. And so I'm very focused on mental health, healthy diet, and trying to get that exercise in and real balance.
So you're going to be having fun these next 7 years. With all this kind of...
Might try some yoga again.
Yoga? Yeah.
Bit of meditation.
Nice.
Yeah, why not?
Well, Pete, we're arriving to the point where we need to say goodbye. We need to stop this recording. But it has been a really nice chat. I like your perspective of what a compliance officer is, what a compliance person should be doing at the business, and I think that people is gonna love this session.
I hope so.
We're gonna have a new one right soon.
Yeah.
And let's make a pact next year. We're gonna sit down again. We're gonna see where you are. Maybe now at the time you can be a yoga practitioner doing the warrior, all that stuff.
I look forward to it.
Yeah?
I look forward to it.
Great. Pete, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you, buddy. Cheers.
Well, guys, thank you very much. This has been another session of Braincast. So thank you, Pete. Ciao, ciao.